Welcome to the Bold Women Podcast. Meryl's over here just shimmying away. Guys, these new tunes.
I love it.
These new tunes are great. We're so excited you're here to join us.
Yeah. And you can join us on social media.
Ooh.
You can, sometimes we have polls. You can comment on Spotify. There's a lot of ways to get in touch with us. You can DM us on Instagram. We're primarily on there. You can leave comments on on YouTube, which I need to get caught up on. Uploading some videos. But
all right. We are so basically, yeah. Come hang out with us online.
Yeah. Now to the topic.
Not to the topic.
To the topic.
Not to like pressure you to be online. But we're talking about peer pressure today.
Whoa.
And we're talking about it from the aspect of I'm trying here, guys. I'm trying, team.
The old dad jokes.
I know. And for I'm not even a
Follow
dad.
them.
Not even a dad, you know?
Well.
We'll never be. All right, anyways. Okay. But we're approaching this topic not from the way that you like typically think.
Like teens peer
pressure or like dare against drugs or for those 80s and 90s babies. Or even from the aspect of like, I'm pressuring you to do bad things. But we're actually going to talk about peer pressure within the church.
Oh.
So this, it's like, what? This doesn't happen? Believe it or not.
Yeller.
So this portion that we're going to kind of go into before we get into questions came from Samaritan's song blog. So I don't necessarily know too much about like who the person is that wrote it, but there are some just very valid points that I think it feels good for additional discussion towards
discussing the article.
So so this article is called Christian Peer Pressure, when it's okay to be out of step sometimes.
Okay.
The person who wrote it was saying that they always feel strange when Christians around them are just really into something, and they just sometimes feel really out of place when they're like, that's great, I'm not really into that. From accountability groups, small groups, weekly dinners, the list could go on of all these things that are oftentimes
meal chains.
Did you do this? Did you join here? Are you involved in this? Are you doing, literally fill in the blank. The thing is, like, peer pressure to participate in certain activities or trends, it does exist amongst Christian as much as it exists in any other group. And for Christians, it can be specific. Oh my gosh, especially.
Whoa.
Sheesh. Difficult to navigate because we often wonder if it's okay to not like something godly. So all these things are good, but is it okay to like not? Is it okay to want to do something different than all the other believers around you? And that kind of that balance of when is it okay to pass and not participate and to be the odd duck of the group, or one is at the spot of like, okay, I need to not be selfish and I need to go do and participate because this is important, versus like, I'm not into that. And that's just not who I am. So kind of, there's a hard balance that comes with that.
Yeah.
As a Christian.
Let's jump right in. Let's talk about their points that they have here.
So,
go for it.
Oh, I couldn't remember if you said you do 1 and 2 and I do 3 and 4, or if you do
other way around.
I do 1 and 2.
Yep.
And you do 3 and 4.
Yep.
You're right. Meryl's always right. Can I just vent about what it's like to do a podcast with someone who's right all the time? From how to pronounce words, how to function and go through things.
You make me laugh.
All right.
I don't get it right all the time. I do not.
Oh my gosh. So this is from this article, the lady wrote these different points about these might be some ways you can identify and deal with Christian peer pressure around a particular issue or practice. So number 1 is ask yourself what the Bible says about a particular issue.
Ooh.
That is huge. And one thing I love is from like our church where Pastor Troy will say, like, go look it up for yourself. Don't just take my word for it.
Yeah.
But go look at it. So many Christian trends, events, and practices are based on biblical principles, but are not in and of themselves inherently scriptural. God commands us, for example, not to forsake the gathering or the fellowship, but thou shalt attend weekly dinners is nowhere in the Bible. Similarly, the Bible contains many precepts about relationships, but does not command you that you refrain from kissing until your wedding day is the example she used. But be sure to differentiate between the two concepts. You're bound to God's word as a believer, but you are not inherently bound to all the practices, techniques, and ideas that have been generated from it.
Oh, that's good.
Like,
fellow introverts, unite. Let's unite together on this, because I think that should be music to your ears if you are not somebody that is super jazzed about getting involved at church.
Yeah.
However,
yep.
Go on to the next point.
2, talk to God about it. So I think we have to be careful and sit down with God to assess our own motives, which is huge. Ideas and thoughts around participating or not participating in something. From this author's part, when the accountability groups became a popular practice, she didn't really want to join in one because she didn't know the group well and she didn't trust them. So she kind of was like, I don't know you and you're expecting brutal honesty from me. But she also talks about how it's so important to examine my own motives. And the questions she asked was, do I want to avoid an accountability group because I don't want to be held accountable in my Christian walk? Or do I just feel like the method of accountability doesn't work for me? The second question turned out to be her honest feeling on the matter, but talking to God about it helped me to be sure of it. Ask God what he wants you to do or to resolve your feelings about what's best for you. He will respond.
That's good. That's good.
So, go ahead.
And then the third one that she said was, be at peace with being different. There are as many different ways to live a Christian life as there are Christians. Certainly, we all agree on core doctrinal truths and practices and ways of living, but beyond that, the options are infinite. Some Christians love accountability groups and small groups and godly courtship. Bless them. Other Christians flock to the popular study of the moment, finding themselves drawn to Rick Warren's A Purpose-Driven Life or the Prayer of Jabez. Some Christians love class and workshops and in-depth lectures. Others love retreats and godly hiking and Christian concerts, and it's all fine. Because of Christ, we can live as free people, and according to 1 Peter 2:16, as long as we do not use our freedom as a cover-up for evil and live instead as servants of God, we may pick and choose among the buffet of Christian activities and trends that float our way. Don't feel guilty if you can't get into the cool new Christian thing, whatever that is, and don't judge those who can. You're free to be yourself, living and acting in love. I think that's really, really important for, I think that sometimes the pressure comes from ourselves. I have to get involved in all of this stuff, or I don't really want to do X, Y, Z. And that's, you know what? It's like, at the end of the day, it's okay. You don't have to do anything. I say this often about me coming back to church. It took, gosh, how long has this church been going? 8 years now?
8 years.
We just had 8 years, came up on 8 years, and probably the first 3.
I was about to say,
well, when the church first opened, like first started, I did serve here and there, but I ended up doing like more travel for work and stuff like that, and so I stepped away from really serving because I was just like, I don't know what weekends I'm going to come, and I was also still just like dabbling in things that I wasn't ready to let go of yet. I mean, I was using I'm like partying and stuff like that, and using a lot of that to cope with things that were going on at home. And, you know, I just wasn't in a space to be around people. And I know that a lot of times I'll say like my focus was just on like mending and repairing and discovering really what my relationship with Christ was all about. And, you know, figuring that out. And I was just so anti getting to know anybody at church,
right? Because
my church experience too was just seemed like everybody was really cliquey, and if you weren't from a certain family or whatever, then it was kind of like you weren't like the in family or something like that. I don't know, and I don't know if I was just making a lot of assumptions. I probably was, but I mean, I was a teenager or whatever. Right. But like it just seemed like that was the impression that I got a lot growing up in church. So as an adult, and coming off of that experience, it was like, the last thing I want to do is get involved with church people. Yeah. And then it came to, we talked about lukewarm Christianity in one of our episodes. And it was in that episode where I talked about where I had, the Lord gave me revelation about myself in that time that I was being lukewarm because I was still entertaining my old lifestyle and behaviors and thoughts and things like that from my old life. And then also going to church, and I was really convicted on that. It was like, well, Meryl, you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. What are you going to do? Like, I don't like this. And this is not, it's biblical. You're not supposed to be.
You're going to pick one or the other.
Yeah. Don't dabble in your old life. When you turn away from it and you accept a life in Christ, turn completely away from your old life because there's nothing there for you. There's nothing there for you. There's nothing there that will still serve you. But also at the same time, I recognize that that in and of itself can be a process.
Yeah.
It's not just like, some people can just like cut it all off, no problem. That was not the case for me.
And I feel like those are kind of like those supernatural moments, and it does happen, but more often than not, it's a process.
Yeah.
I feel like generally like looking, yes, I have seen where God does. You have Saul who turned to Paul in the Bible, but then you also have others where it's he's a process God.
Yeah. I think that there was just one point where it was just like, well, you haven't really given, people at church a fair shot. You haven't given them a chance. You haven't given anybody a chance to prove to you that they are what you remember growing up. And so that was like, okay, well then I'll sort of dabble in serving, or I'll sort of, dabble in hanging out with a few people from church. And, cause then it's like, well, if one of them just shows me that they're all terrible, then I'll have to start from scratch and go somewhere else, I guess.
Head on out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was not the case. I actually found that there was a lot of stability within building relationships with people at church and having that kind of community. People who, know how to pray and know how to pray for you and over you when you're telling them that you're going through something is like, that's not something you're going to get from, still partaking in your old lifestyle, because whatever you had going on there, it didn't involve God. So it's like, all right.
Yeah.
And I will get to the fourth.
Well, if I can add to before the fourth. So you talked about like from the aspect of like wanting to like stay away from church. And then I kind of grew up in the aspect that was polar opposite, where everything revolved around the church. So, which I love the local church and I think it's vitally important, but I have also seen, where, I do believe that if your family is suffering at the hands of you, of everything you do is tied to church, but your family is suffering, or, which is like good heart, right? Like I want to serve the Lord. I want to give him everything I have, but like realizing like your primary focus in life is ministry to your family first. Yeah. And so I think it can also go completely other on the side of like the extremes of, okay, I'm not doing anything in church, or absolutely everything I do is involved in my family and like the other things God's given me suffer from that. I think it looks very different if you don't have a family, right? Like that also looks very different. But, like I think that there's like this middle ground aspect of it too. I don't know. I know it's such a touchy topic, as well, just because there is good that is in being involved. Like you were saying too, like you're going to get things being involved in church that you will not get from the world. And like God tells us, like we were reading earlier, don't forsake gathering together. You're not supposed to do it by yourself and be on your own.
Right.
So go ahead. Right.
Okay. The fourth and final one is don't judge others. And they go on to say, I never really found the concept of godly courtship to be helpful to me. I was never really into the accountability group movement either. It just didn't really work for me. But I do know that for a lot of other people, both of these practices have made a significant difference. They've been helpful Christian tools. Even if something doesn't work for you personally, whether you had a bad experience or it just wasn't happening or it felt like a waste of time, understand that because we're all different, others might not share your experience. So do your best to support everyone in the things they do that bring them closer to Christ. So for believers today, there are so many options available to help us strengthen and participate in our faith. Everyday churches come up with new ideas for fellowship and growth. It makes sense that some of them will stick and some won't, and that none of them will work for everyone. So feel free to experiment and pass on what doesn't suit you while pursuing what does. God's children are a blessed array of people and personalities made unique and individually by him for his purpose, so embrace it. And I think that that's important too, is like, that should be freeing to anyone who's ever thought about this. Like, do I serve? I don't want to be responsible for this. And I love the part where it's like, you should really be questioning. Yeah. Like, where is this coming from? Yeah. Why am I resistant to this?
I was just going to say, I think I know one of our first questions is like, what are your thoughts on the article? But I think that's like the overarching thing is that, am I avoiding something because what's my reasoning? What's myself? Yeah. Let me do the deep, honest work of the why.
I think that also something that this person doesn't touch on, which kind of is giving me pause to this article, is the way that they are saying, like, this didn't work for me. Right. I got nothing out of this. I didn't feel blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I think that people do that too much.
I would agree.
We go into serving, or we go into a Bible study, or we go into an accountability or a prayer group, or looking to get something out of it, for personal, either validation, some kind of personal gain. Right. And I think that when you approach things in that way, that is where you are going to set yourself up for church hurt. Yeah. And you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. And so I would that's kind of the only thing that I would say is kind of where I'm kind of like, caution people who are, because I mean, there are things, that's not to say go do everything, because we literally just went through stuff that says, everyone has different personalities, and there's different things that the important parts are asking God to help you or sort out why you are resistant to doing something or taking part in something. Yeah. And then also important to look at oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
No, you're okay. My first thought,
maybe I'll get it back,
to kind of, to tag onto that, is not everything is about you. Like like in reading the article, like, yes, I agree, but it's not the church's job to tailor make everything for you. And so sometimes I think,
or for the church to bring bring things for you. Yeah. Well, something that our church harkens on is like, oh, you don't see we call them chapel groups. They're small groups. You don't see something that is appealing to you. Well, then you start a group. Right. And
do what you like.
And if nobody joins it, you don't take it personally. Right. That's the part about not judging. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, well, I'm the person that's interested in this. Okay, if nobody else is, that doesn't mean that somebody won't be at some point.
Right. Or if one person did, not 15, you have an opportunity to make a good friend. Sure. Because you can relate over one thing. But that's just kind of what I was thinking too, is that like something might not really work for you, but if God's like calling you to do it, like sometimes we have to, one of the fruit of the spirits is selflessness. So am I not doing something because it's like I have a selfish motive and it doesn't work for me? Or is it causing me to be selfless? And you know what? This might not be my thing, but I know community is important and I'm not involved in anything else. Yeah. So I might have to get involved in this, even though it's not quite what I want to do with my Saturday morning. Or now if you're spread so thin and so I think that's like you were saying too, is that like, hey, Lord, help me pick what you would like me to do, because I can't do everything. And like help my heart see the why. Why do I not want to?
I have to talk about an experience that I've had in our church. This is going to be interesting to talk about, I think.
There's a question on here. Have you ever felt peer pressure in church?
Yes.
Okay, but go on. I didn't mean.
But I don't know that I felt it from other people. I think I was pressuring myself.
From yourself.
So I do some singing, and turns out I'm not half bad.
She's so good.
Sometimes.
I love sitting next to her in worship because I feel like I can sing because she harmonizes, and I'm like, we're good. All right, go on.
But I have gone back and forth with serving like on the worship team. I have issues with like timing and things like that. And as much as I tried, because a lot of times, you know, something that was drilled a lot, and this is not speaking negatively, this is just something that was like, okay, it's not about us. At the end of the day, if we're making a joyful noise to the Lord, like that's what counts. That's what matters. And, you know, just come prepared, practice, do what you can. And so there were a few times where like I would lead some songs and I didn't feel like they turned out super great. And it wasn't that I don't know. I think part of it was me just not wanting to screw up, in the sense of like, I didn't want to make a mistake so bad that it was like distracting for people. Mm-hmm. And I think that I allowed that to kind of get into my head. And so a lot of, and then like I stopped kind of like leading songs and then would just do harmonies and stuff. And I really enjoyed doing harmonies, but then, I don't know, it was just after a while, it was like, I'm just not like, it's not that I didn't feel like it was a selfish motive. It was just like, I could tell that I was not into it. Mm-hmm. Like my heart was not in it. I was not, I was like, man, I really just don't want to practice for this. I just don't want to learn another song. I don't want to do this XYZ kind of thing. And it wasn't that there was like any like negative feeling like about the songs or anything like that. I was just like, I just don't want to do this. And something that that occurred to me was like, so I am like the admin assistant for.
She's a very organized person.
The what we call the servant pastors. That would be like the lead pastors in our church. And I, you know, handle like our church app. I'll add events, and I just kind of like, I take notes during our lead pastors meetings and things like that. They have a call at 6 a.m. once a week. That's really fun to get up for sometimes. And it was funny because it occurred to me, I was like, you're not considering like the work that you do there as serving the church, and right. You're actually serving the church.
No, it's huge. Yeah.
So it's okay if this is not the season for you to like be doing worship right now, because you've been doing this whole time.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I never considered that to be like serving.
Right. Because it doesn't fit in quote unquote, I'm holding a door, or I'm holding a baby, or
I'm a very behind the scenes person. Yeah. Like I am not out in front doing stuff. And I like that. And it's just funny because it did not occur to me that way. And then it was just kind of like, if you want to step away for a season from the worship team, that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're not still serving in some capacity. You are.
My pastor back home said this, and this was a few months ago, and it really did set me free from something. And he was talking about like to the church, and he said, we have to stop telling people they're backsliding when their seasons are changing. And I just thought that was really good, because there is a time where it's like you can tell people are pulling away because of not like pursuing Christ, but he's like, sometimes people's seasons just change, and if they have to step away for a little bit, that doesn't mean they're backsliding. And I just thought that was a really good like way to think about it.
Well, I neglected to include the reason why I was feeling pressure, or what was causing me to feel pressure was like, I had this thing in my mind. It was like, that is a gift. Like you being able to sing is a gift, and it's not for your own entertainment. Mm-hmm. And so I went back and forth so much because I was just like, I know my heart's not in this right now. And like, I don't feel like I am being a good servant or a steward of this gift if my heart's not in it. But at the same time, I have this voice in my head going, your gift isn't for you. Your gift is to bring, bring the presence of God for people to worship. You are an example of what it looks like to worship when you are up there leading that. Yeah. And so I was just feeling a lot of that, and that's why I was like struggling so much with like, there was times where it was like, for a few years, like I would take off like the months of November and December. And then I would only serve like once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, sometimes I would also say to myself, oh, you can't even freaking just do it once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, no, actually just not right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what it was. And and I don't feel like it was any, I don't know. But once I had that realization, it was like, well, you're serving in other capacities. Like you're doing all the admin stuff and that's fine.
Right.
Like that's okay.
Well, what you just said makes me think of 2 Corinthians 9:6-7. And this is often in reference to like tithing or giving like financially, but I think it can kind of come across in the service aspect, right? Because giving looks across the board. And it says the point of this, and this is verse 6. It says the point of this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will reap bountifully. That part's actually, if I recall correctly, is talking about forgiveness. If we go back before. But verse 7, as it says, each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And I think that goes towards that service side too, of like, don't serve because you are under compulsion or you feel pressure. Like that's not a place of service.
Obligation, yeah.
Like you're saying, like it's like that heart position is going to be huge. And sometimes, yes, we have to do what we don't want to do, but is it like, what is the heart spot?
Yeah. Again, like, asking like, why do I feel this way, God? Why do I not want to do this?
Yeah.
That was good.
And how does so this next question says, how does the phrase pressure makes diamonds in the realm make you feel? Because like so many times I hear like, you hear that phrase, pressure makes diamonds, but sometimes it's like when we feel so much pressure, like what's a healthy pressure that makes diamonds and what's pressure that's like beyond, like, I can't do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. I got fixated on this for a minute the other day when I was prepping for this. And I was going to look it up and then I got distracted and didn't end up looking it up. But I had heard somewhere that everything that we've been led to believe about diamonds forming because of pressure might not necessarily be true.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So I can't remember where I heard that from. Makes me want to look it up now.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Because you've heard that taught for so long. Because I know there's been times in just vulnerability 101, I've literally like cried out to God where I'm like, Lord, I can't take any more pressure of this. I can't take any more pressure of like kind of like this phase of life I'm in, trying to navigate this. I can't take any more pressure of like volunteering more or being here. And some of those same like cries of the heart, like, what is it? Are there heart issues within me of why I can't? Am I putting value in certain things? I think what big thing you said too is like, am I putting pressure on myself that's not actually there? I think is a big one. Of am I feeling more of this than what is like? It's literally not a thing. Mm-hmm. I know one of the things that I have. I feel like I was crying about this the other day. I was gonna be real honest about it, but that I think one of the things I've struggled with, and this is on one of our questions, is like being in a different phase of life, and where I was just like, God, I feel so much pressure to be the perfect friend, and like, how do I do that when my seasons of life look very different than my friends? And I feel like I'm being a bad friend a lot of times. Like I carry the weight of that, of I should be doing more. I should be, why can't you give more here? Why don't your friendships look the same as when you all were in the same stage and phase of life? Mm-hmm. And carrying that on myself. And so like, I know that's a big pressure that I have faced in like the process of, married, divorce, friends' lives continuing to grow and progress into different seasons and feeling, and I'm not even going to say taking a step backwards, because it's not like promotion to backwards, but just, okay, now I'm back in single stage, almost 40, never been here before. This looks very different than single stage when all my friends were single in their 20s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, just sometimes feeling like I'm failing my friends in different stages of life because I don't feel like I'm keeping the same, like, I'm not, don't feel like I'm friending the way I did when we were in the same seasons.
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm wording that terribly, but that's something that, like, I know lately is just pressure that I feel like I fail a lot in that.
Yeah. Well, me to you, you haven't, because you've never been here before.
Yeah.
So how about that?
Yeah.
You've never been approaching 40.
Yeah.
You've never experienced anything that you've experienced before that you're currently experiencing. So, first of all, something that I want to address is, it's going to kind of jump around a little bit, but it's still on the phrase of pressure makes diamonds.
Well, we got trampolines, so let's jump.
There's another question you listed here that says, what's the difference between encouraging and pressuring? And I did, of course, look this up, and it says encouragement focuses on supporting and believing in someone's ability to achieve a goal, while pressure often implies a forceful expectation to perform, potentially causing stress and anxiety if not managed well. Essentially, encouragement is about the process, while pressure is more concerned with the outcome.
That's good.
Examples. Encouragement. You're doing great. Keep practicing. You can definitely achieve this goal. Pressure. You need to get a perfect score on this test or else you'll be in trouble. So, in my mind, pressure doesn't make diamonds. Like, that does not, in the realm of peer pressure, being pressured by other people isn't going to produce good from somebody. You're not going to produce anything good by pressuring somebody.
Oh, that's very good.
And so that was how I was going to respond to the pressure making diamonds thing.
No, I think
they don't work well together. That doesn't work.
Well, and I think if you can even look at taking that into our relationship,
and pressuring yourself comes
right. Yeah. Well, that's also, you guys, clearly you've been on episodes, if you've listened a long time, where I'll never forget when Philip, my counselor, turned around to me and he like wheeled his chair up and he got in my face. And he doesn't do this. I mean, Meryl, you've met him now, and he's the most like laid back, chill dude. And so I knew what he said was very meaningful. And he wheeled around and he rolled up and he put his hands on his knees and he looked at me in my eyes, both of them. That was a joke. But he said, he's like, Maria, you cannot be perfect and you will die trying.
Yeah.
And just point blank. And I said, first off, you are not wrong, but you didn't have to say it that way. And then we just started laughing. But it's that, like, I think there's some ideas too. And this is one of the things I've been working through and lately is that, like, I have some incorrect views of God. So I tend to oftentimes put God more into this aspect of you need to perform or do well. And this is something like I'm actively working on. I know it's a wrong view that I have of him. And so I often put that on others too, because if this is how I view like the utmost loving God, how are, like from different perspectives.
As I was saying earlier about how it's like, you've never done almost 40. You've never done almost 40 single. You've never done almost 40 single divorced. Yeah. You've never done almost 40 single divorced and living in a city where you don't have any family really. Yeah. So I think that what you're doing is like putting unrealistic expectations, those unrealistic expectations of a past Maria that are not, this is not the same Maria. And so you're applying those old expectations that you had for yourself and still trying to make them work into now. And you just can't do that because you're going to end up just hurting yourself because you're not in that spot. You're not in that space. And so it's a matter of, having to be okay with letting that go and like just kind of embracing like, all right, I've never done any of this before. Yeah. Never been almost 40. Never been divorced.
Literally like 6 months away from 40.
It's my first time being divorced. I never thought I would see myself as single at this age or at this time in my life. I never thought that XYZ would blow up the way that it did, but guess what? It did. Yeah. You're still here to talk about it and you're here sharing your story and that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. And we got to be able to, take that and move on from it and like not beat ourselves up in the process just because it didn't happen the way that we expected it to when we were 20 something.
Right.
Or even 30 something.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think too of the what's what I'm looking for? Like even in breaking like my people pleasing off too, like that's just a major thing that the Lord's doing in me, where it feels sometimes like, oh God, am I just being gutted from the very, like you were saying earlier, of everything that I have known me to be is now, gosh dang it. You know, but that aspect of like everything that has served and like kept me safe for so long, like is being like gutted.
Yeah.
And so like, even when it's like, man, seasons change and it feels like, okay, my seasons are even different, like letting alone who you're creating me to be is changing. Like where it just feels like I used to have some of those like, I don't know, like stability coping things where I knew I was okay. So like it felt like that season could be managed better, where sometimes it feels like, oh, I feel like I'm failing this season, even though like I know I'm not, because it's like some of that like stability stuff isn't there. This is, guys, I have cried multiple times on recording today. So probably, but yeah, so I think.
Well, you have to take that dust from your sandals and shake it off and move on to the next town, my friend.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the things too. It's like, I know as whatnot, like I am not who I was when I was 20, even 30, like even 35, I am not the same. And like realizing that that's okay, that it's not me going backwards. It's me becoming who he's made me to be, and not comparing her to, because as much as I don't hate who I am by any means, but it's like, I also have to like realize that there's some things that like I thought were good, but they actually weren't serving. I hate that. Like they weren't serving me, but they weren't like healthy. They were in places of like people pleasing and different things like that. So, realizing that those things don't necessarily like maybe you felt more like at peace there because like things felt peaceful, but you actually like weren't.
You were just putting Band-Aids on.
Yeah, exactly.
You were putting a bandage on something that was just gonna,
eventually pop up as a.
Well, and it's also looking at it like at some point you don't have to bandage it anymore.
Right.
You just have to take it off and you discard it.
Yeah.
Because that bandage, there's healing. It may not be fully healed, but it's not like gushing blood. Right. So you and I feel don't like need you don't need to use that anymore.
Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at in life.
Yep.
So
that's okay.
And that's okay. Do you ever think that you've ever pressured somebody and not realized what you were doing? And have you ever done that in church?
Okay. So this question was interesting to me. Given what I had just stated about the difference between encouragement and pressure, I don't, this may be controversial, but maybe not. Okay. Maybe people will agree. Who's to say? I don't think it's possible to pressure someone and not realize it. Like we make a conscious decision on like the words we choose to say when we're dealing with someone. Yeah. Who has, I was just giving an example. I was thinking of an example of like someone who's come to us with a situation. They may be like seeking counsel or just like, I need to hash this out or whatever. I think the better question that we should be asking is more about like what we've done when we've pressured someone, especially in church. And I mean by that is like we're called to hold other believers accountable, but are we holding ourselves accountable as well? That's good. Are we checking to make sure people are in a place to receive what we're saying to them? Have we spent time praying about the conversation so that we can gain, assistance and wisdom from the Holy Spirit in how we deliver what we're going to say to the other person? And I think overall we would do a lot better with regard to the health of the church if we considered these types of things. Because oftentimes it's like when someone approaches us with something and they're just wanting to talk about it, I think That's one of the hardest things. It's one of the hardest things when you're emulating Christ, when you're trying to emulate Christ, is watching somebody knowing that they're making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And all you can do is tell them, and you just got to watch them go do it.
Yeah.
That is one of the most painful things. And there's nothing wrong with saying your piece, saying, I don't think this is the right move for you, and here's why.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should do that. But beyond that, we shouldn't be pressuring somebody.
Yeah.
And if we do, then we know we're doing it.
Right.
Because you're trying to convince them of certain things. But if you just look at them and go, no, I disagree with that, and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got, even like, if you've got scripture to back it up, great, even better. But it's like, it's also, when you have those conversations, it's important to go, did I insert myself into this conversation? Or, sometimes it's important to ask the person, like, especially if you're not really sure what they're going to talk to you about. 'Cause sometimes you may have the same conversation with somebody over and over.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I know you're doing the wrong thing, but you keep doing it, but I'm going to check in with you to make sure you're okay and like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still going to tell you that what you're doing is wrong. But I'm going to love you. I'm going to love you through it and whatever.
Yeah.
But then there's like the other type of situation where somebody's coming to you, you're not really sure what they're going to be like talking to you about.
Yeah.
And so, I think our natural tendency is to go, oh, this person wants my advice and they want to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that we can get in trouble doing. That's where we can end up pressuring people without not without realizing, because we know what we're trying to get them to do.
Right.
But,
or we say our opinion before we actually like fully listen to
right.
them.
And I think it's helpful to something I've been trying to learn to do is pausing and asking the person, like, are you wanting my 2 cents? Are you wanting my advice on this? Or are you just like looking to vent?
Yeah. That
is something I have been, trying really hard, like with my sister. My sister and I are like incredibly brutally honest with each other. And, sometimes we'll talk about stuff, and like recently it occurred to me, it was like, Meryl, you should ask her if she wants to hear your advice or if she's just trying to vent to you. And I was like, oh, okay. So then we were texting, and I had texted her and I was like, are you wanting my advice, or are you just wanting to vent? Mm-hmm. And she's like, I just need to vent. And I was like, okay.
Right.
But
that's a great question though.
Sometimes that's just what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And then I think you avoid the whole like, oh, did I pressure that person to do something that maybe they weren't comfortable with doing? Or, you can save yourself a lot if you're just going, okay, are you wanting advice? Are you wanting to be told what to do? Right. Some people are like that. They welcome it and they're like, tell me what to do. Right. I don't know what to do. And then you can give your 2 cents that way. But I mean,
and you run into too where some people are like external processors. So they might tell you 90 things and they'll get to where they want.
Like you do.
Like I do. But like sometimes too, it's like it's like giving people the space to like come to that. Now they'll probably come to the end and be like, oh yeah, probably whatnot. But it's like allowing like that versus, like you said, forceful. So I think that's a good spot of being like, hey, do you need me just to listen right now? Or like, do you want me to listen for advice? I think it's a great, upfront question to ask.
And I don't always do that. Sometimes I just tell people like, if I may.
Oh no, I was like, I think I get bad at that too, where I'm like, oh, if you're coming to me, you're obviously asking for my opinion.
Right.
And it's like, not necessarily. Someone just genuinely might need an ear.
Sometimes
so
you just might be a safe place for somebody to just spout off some stuff, and you're like, okay. Yeah. And that's all they need.
Yeah. Should we read some scripture before we wrap this bad boy up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Romans 12:2 says, don't copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know what's God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect.
Nice. Proverbs 13:20, walk with the wise and become wise, associate with fools and get in trouble.
Ooh.
Well, isn't that something?
Isn't that something?
Isn't that some stuff?
Right. And I think a big thing too is it's like the walk part. So that doesn't mean you don't ever associate, like you don't ever talk to someone who doesn't know Christ or whatnot, but it's like my daily walk. Who am I walking with?
Yeah, but it's also like associating is like who you're spending time with.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's true.
And if they aren't leading anywhere good, then why are you even bothering?
Yeah, very true. All right, Galatians 1:10, obviously, comma, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant.
Okay, Paul, coming in hot.
Sheesh.
Obviously, I'm not trying.
Thanks, Paul.
And then another one from Paul, 1 Corinthians 10:13. The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. That kicked me in the face a few years ago.
Yeah.
I never read it. Like, the temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. So he's basically just saying, like, quit acting like you're something special, like you have some unique struggle. You don't. Everyone has gone through that, or somebody, you can find someone, or probably multiple people that have gone through what you're going through.
Yeah.
And it says, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, he will show you a way out so that you can endure. The part about he will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. What is that phrase? I used to say it, actually, and I'm embarrassed that I used to say it. That was, God won't give you more than you can handle. And I think that's incredibly wrong, because he does. He can give you way more than you can handle. The part is, he will show you a way out so that you can endure. But guess what? He can't show you if you're not going to him.
Right.
So it's like, yes, he can sometimes give you more than you can deal with, and more than you can endure. But guess what? He will help you.
Yeah. And you have to go to him
to do it. You have to go to him to do it.
Yep. Ugh. That's good. All right.
How about that?
How about that? Any other thoughts you got?
No. Be safe.
All
Make
right.
some good decisions.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah. We love you guys. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks for being on my diagnosis episode. All right. Bye.